I'm going to correctly guess something right now. You're sitting in front of your computer as you're watching this story. Some of you are holding phones. Do you want to know how I became clairvoyant? Make yourself comfy and listen carefully. My name is Mary. I grew up in the suburbs with my mom, dad, and sister. Elizabeth was only 2 years younger than me, but it felt like we were from different planets. We looked a lot alike, and people often mistook us for each other, but that's where the similarities ended. Elizabeth would climb onto the roof of our garage, argue with our teachers, ride her bike, and disappear for hours. Meanwhile, I had to practice asking the teacher for permission to leave, and I would still speak too quietly in the end. At school, I was the wallflower no one noticed until it was time for a group project. I was too timid to approach the guy I liked. I was too scared to speak up in class. I was even afraid to write first in the school group chat because it felt like everyone would think I was weird. I didn't have any close friends and only occasionally exchanged a few words with other quiet students like me. One day, my mother realized that I was struggling. She was a psychologist and always spoke like she knew what was on your mind. Mary, imagine you have a superpower. Take it seriously, and it will help you feel strong. I only shrugged and imagined declaring that I could turn invisible at school. I would have become a laughingstock. In the end, I decided to ignore Mom's advice. I didn't even notice that Elizabeth was standing in the hallway and heard it all. The next day, Elizabeth was on cloud 9 when she came home from school. At dinner, she said that she had told her classmates that she could predict the future. Unlike me, my sister listened to our mom's advice. Of course, no one at school believed her, but Elizabeth just got mad and said she'd prove it to everyone. She brought some strange amulets, ordered cheap tarot cards, and read online articles about magic, psychics, and fortune tellers. Next, she started to dress like she was going to take part in the American Psychic Challenge. It was like she didn't notice the other kids laughing at her when she came to school. I will predict your future. But none of her predictions ever came true. I tried to talk to Mom and explain that Elizabeth misunderstood her words, but Mom was too preoccupied with her own worries. She was constantly fighting with Dad. I heard their raised voices and doors being slammed shut every day. Mom often stormed out of the house to cool off. I listened to them fight and stayed quiet in my room, pretending I was not there. Meanwhile, at school, Elizabeth's antics reached a whole new level. Now she was performing some sort of magical ritual right at recess. The whole school was laughing at her. It affected me too. Your sister is a wacko. Your whole family must be weird. I pulled on Elizabeth's sleeve and told her to stop. Quit it! But she didn't listen to me. I was exhausted. All that was waiting for me at home were our fighting parents, and at school, I was ridiculed. There wasn't a single place where I could sit quietly. But one day, Mom came to my room. Mary, your father and I are filing for divorce. You and Elizabeth should pack your things. We're moving. I felt fear mixed with relief. I see it. If you subscribe to the channel and press like, you will soon receive good news. A few weeks later, we were already settling into our new place in a new city. Mom rented an apartment and enrolled us in a new school. The first evening after we moved, I saw Elizabeth taking out her amulets and weird clothes again. I immediately realized that she would start all over again and literally begged her not to tell our new classmates about her abilities. I'm not going to hide. At least don't tell anyone we're sisters. Fine. The next morning, we came to school separately and spent the whole day acting like strangers. I cautiously started conversations with my new classmates, and to my surprise, everything went fine. No one ridiculed me. We got along fine. One day, I even caught myself looking at a handsome boy called Peter. Things seemed to be looking up, except for the fact that Mom spent most of her time sitting at home and staring at nothing. Mom, have you thought about finding a job? Mom nodded, but I wasn't sure if she'd actually heard me. A few days later, I heard gossip about a strange girl from elementary school that considered herself psychic. One day, I overheard Peter and his friends discussing my sister. They said they would put a toy snake in her locker to prank her. When she freaks out, we will say that a real fortune teller would have foreseen it. That evening, I told Elizabeth what was awaiting her at school tomorrow. She looked at me enigmatically. I saw this coming. Stop acting like a psychic and be normal. But Elizabeth just smiled and didn't listen. The next day at school, a small crowd gathered around the lockers. I didn't even have to get closer to know that Elizabeth was standing in the middle of that chaos. I see something dangerous inside. Everyone fell silent. Someone snorted, someone laughed, but Elizabeth slowly opened her locker and a toy snake fell out onto the floor. Everyone looked like they didn't know whether to laugh or to run. This is a coincidence. Yeah, she must have put the snake there herself. But in the end, There was one thing everyone agreed on. Elizabeth was the weirdest girl in school, and now everyone tried to avoid her like her strangeness could be contagious. I felt like my insides were shrinking because I knew it wasn't the end yet. At the next recess, Peter and his friends cornered me, and it was clear from his face that this wasn't going to be a friendly chat. "I think you heard us talking yesterday. Did you tell that psycho about the snake in her locker?" I mumbled something, unable to string a sentence together. "Wait, why do you have the same last name as her?" "I know, you're sisters!" At that moment, I was so scared that I just turned around and ran. I could hear them laughing and shouting after me. Peter and his friends chased me down the hallway, but then I bumped into someone. I looked up and saw my mom with a folder in her hands. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I got a job as a school psychologist here." The next day, I felt like I was going back to my old school. Everyone already knew that Elizabeth and I were sisters. They sneaked glances at me, whispered behind my back, and I wished I could disappear. At recess, Peter and his friends saw me and made stupid jokes about my sister again. At some point, I just couldn't stand it any longer. I had no plan and simply ran away. I ran into the first office I saw and hid in a closet just to sit in the dark and get a moment to breathe. And then, through the crack in the door, I saw my mother walk into the office with one of the students. It was only then that I realized that I had accidentally hidden in the office of the school psychologist. I sat there, hardly daring to breathe, and listened to Stanley tell my mom about his problems. "I hide adult magazines under my mattress, and I'm afraid my mom will find them." I couldn't believe what I had just heard. Then, Monica walked in right after he left and started to spill her secrets. "I have a pimple down there. It doesn't go away, and it hurts to sit down. If anyone finds out, I won't survive the embarrassment." As I sat there and listened to it all, something in my head clicked. The next day, I dressed like Elizabeth, put on all sorts of trinkets, and came to school. Everyone stared at me. Since everyone knows, I admit it. I am also a psychic, a real one. They burst out laughing, but I made a mysterious face and approached Stanley. I see a secret under your mattress." He paled and told me to shut up, but I was just getting started. "Monica, I see you have a pimple. It hurts to sit, huh?" Horrified, she asked me to stop. After that, everyone abruptly stopped laughing. They gave me a wide berth and whispered when I walked by. Instead of ridiculing me, they now feared me. They didn't bother me or Elizabeth anymore because they thought we were the weirdest girls in school and were afraid we might see into their brains. I kept sneaking into the mom's office, eavesdropping on students' confessions, and then using them for my act. At home, Elizabeth kept asking me what my secret was, but I kept dodging the question. She even complained to Mom, but Mom was depressed and barely reacted to our arguments. Over time, I lost all fear and started to use the secrets I learned for personal gain. I made my classmates do my homework in exchange for my silence. And then, one day, I saw that my mom had come to school, so I quickly sneaked into her office and hid in the closet. But then, I realized someone was already in it. Oh, I turned on the flashlight on my phone and saw Elizabeth. "I've been following you, little sister, and now I know how you do it." I tried to kick her out, but it was too late. Mom came into the office, followed by Peter. I couldn't believe he needed help. Peter said he was depressed and had been feeling unwell for a long time, but Mom barely seemed to be listening. "Take vitamins and get some sleep. It will pass." As I sat in the closet, I realized that it wouldn't help Peter at all. He had come not to receive dismissive advice, but because he truly did not know how to go on living. Peter left the office and quietly closed the door. Then Mom also picked up some papers and left. Finally, Elizabeth and I got out of the closet. Elizabeth looked pleased, perhaps too pleased. "Now I know his secret. I will make real prophecies and no one will laugh at me. Don't even think about making fun of Peter. He's already feeling bad. This isn't a game." "Yeah, if you can do it, so can I." I tried to explain that I hadn't done it for fun, but she just snorted and left. The next day, my worst fears came true. Elizabeth calmly approached Peter in the hallway and made her trademark mysterious face as she touched her amulets. "I see dark clouds gathering over you." Peter didn't even laugh. He frowned, turned around and left. It was at that moment that it finally dawned on me that we could really ruin people's lives while playing psychics. I grabbed Elizabeth's arm and pulled her away. "Stop this. It's not funny anymore. This isn't cool." "I won't stop. If you get in my way, I'll tell Mom that you've been hiding in her closet." At that moment, I realized that I had backed myself into a corner, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel omnipotent. I felt stupid. I kept thinking about Peter all day, going over his words in my head, and in the evening, I decided to talk to my mom. "Mom, there's this guy at school, Peter. He's been gloomy lately. Why don't you talk to him?" "That's teenage nonsense. He can handle it without me. I have enough to deal with." I realized that she wasn't going to be of any help. At that moment, something clicked in me, and I decided that if the the adults couldn't handle it, I would do it myself. The next day, I approached Peter and invited him to the cinema to watch a comedy. I was surprised that I managed to get the words out at all, but Peter looked at me with a sneer. Did you see our date in a vision? It's not going to happen. That stung, but I didn't give up. After school, I caught up with Peter and gave him a nice present, just to make him smile, but he laughed at me again and left. I stayed up all night trying to think of a way to get him out of that state. In the morning, I decided to do something crazy. I decided that I would just come up to him and kiss him. Maybe strong emotions would pull him out of despair, at least for a moment. I came to school mentally preparing for the worst, but then I quickly realized that Peter was nowhere to be seen. Where's Peter today? We don't know either. He's not answering his phone. My heart sank. I found out his address and ran there without hesitating for a moment. I knocked on the door of his house, but no one answered. Then I walked around the house and saw an ajar window. I climbed inside and ran through the rooms until I found a note. I read it and my hands started to shake. Mom, Dad, you don't care about me. You don't see me. Goodbye, Peter. I ran out of the house scared out of my mind. I called some classmates and found out that Peter and his friends often hung out on the roof of a local mall. I ran there, fearing the worst. On the way, I called Mom and told her everything. Then I called emergency services and said there might be a guy on the roof of the mall who needed help. When I came to the roof, I immediately saw Peter. My breath caught in my throat. I tried to talk to him, but he wouldn't listen. So I just sat down next to him and started telling him my whole story. About my parents' divorce, my cowardice, the closet, and the psychologist's office. I told him about pretending to be a psychic and realizing that I was only making things worse. Peter listened attentively and then smiled. Your problems are worse than mine, but why did you decide to help me? Instead of answering, I smiled and kissed him, not thinking about anything. First responders were already up the stairs. Then, Peter's mom, friends, and classmates arrived as well. Peter looked at it all and said, "What a comedy. Should we go watch a real movie?" I agreed, almost laughing with relief. Peter and I had been dating ever since. His depression gradually lessened, and so did my timidity. Mother was fired from school because she hadn't been doing her job properly, and she became depressed again. I guess I'm a bad psychologist. I lost my husband, and I didn't help Peter. Mom, maybe you should do something else. Well, I've always liked cooking. A few days later, she got a job at a restaurant, and her mood improved. Only Elizabeth has not changed. She still pretends to be psychic and makes predictions that don't come true. You know what I realized? Sometimes we pretend to be special to finally get noticed, but then we realize that the real strength means being honest and not hiding behind masks or amulets.